miles across where we're seeing these hurricane force winds. Little jogs are not going to change our wind threat very much. The big difference is, do we talk about something that hits a little bit farther to the east where that storm surge is a much lower threat versus something that does go right at the mouth of the bay, and that's sort of the worst case in terms of that. But we're going to continue to move this on basically the same trajectory that we've been talking about. And at this point, once we start getting, Grant, to an area where we're 36 hours out at this point from really seeing the worst of this storm, we're not going to see huge changes in our track anymore. We're going to basically make minor tweaks here and there. And we've already started to turn things more out of the northwest. So last night we were looking at more of a west-northwest that's shifted just a little bit. And so that eye now working its way toward the Florida Keys. I think you checked, we were seeing already 80-mile-per-hour winds being reported in the Keys. So we're going to continue to see deteriorating conditions. There's the eye, there's the center of that storm, still moving off to the north. And the worst of these winds is about what they're going to be dealing with. It's this eye wall right here, again, just southeast of Key West, where we're likely seeing these Category 4 hurricane force winds. But again, 74-mile-per-hour or greater winds go out 80 miles from the center of this storm. So it's pretty large, and places like Key Largo, even up toward Miami, and we've actually had some flood reports on the east side of the state because we've seen these bands just moving through, and they're not moving all that quick. So watch Key Largo and just watch kind of this batch of rain just continually bring those just inundating heavy downpours over the area. And on top of that, they're dealing with the strong winds too. So they're by no means out of the woods yet. Here's a closer view. And again, it's likely right in here where we're seeing the strongest winds with this. When we say 130-mile-per-hour winds, that's the strongest that we've found, that we've estimated from the information we've gotten as the hurricane hunters are going out and about. So it's not necessarily this ring that's 130-mile-per-hour winds, but likely there's a chunk in here that is dealing with that. And again, only slowly drifting to the northwest. Has picked up a little speed since our last check, but we're looking at pretty negligible differences here. And we're talking about something in the neighborhood of a few miles where that worst of it is. Unfortunately, it looks like it's still on track to slam right into the Florida Keys. Look at some of these winds. 66 miles per hour now, Key West. Even as we go all the way up to Miami, we're talking 59. So starting to really see things deteriorate. We're going to continue to do that. And of course, on top of the winds, flooding is going to be a threat, not the highest threat, but for places like Miami, that's the most significant thing they're dealing with right now. And we're already seeing those winds up around what you would see for a severe thunderstorm warning. But think, severe thunderstorm warnings, maybe one, maybe two counties, we're going to get those winds across the entire state of Florida. So on a large scale, we're talking a lot more damage here. Closer to home, things are pretty quiet right now. We've got some heavy rain, one of those outer bands starting to work its way into eastern Polk County, over into Hardee County as well, parts of northern Highlands County, but just some light sprinkles around the Bay Area. And it was just outside a few moments ago. Winds are picking up, but they're by no means what we're going to be seeing as we head into this time tomorrow. It's overnight tonight into very early tomorrow morning that we're going to be expecting the worst from this storm. Places like Fort Pierce, there have been flood warnings issued. That's where we've seen, again, this training or heavy bands of rain moving over the same area time and time and time again. And that is going to be, in some spots, those isolated rainfall totals up to around a foot. That's not going to be something across the state. We've been talking about this for a couple days now, and we do want to stress to you, this is not going to be a Harvey event. This is going to be a wind and in some cases storm surge event, but by and large, flooding is not going to be our major concern here, whereas it definitely was with Harvey, especially after that initial landfall and it started to weaken. That sat over the state of Texas, though, for 5.5 days. We're talking something that's going to be in and out in 2. So we're still dealing with the same kind of rainfall rates, but we're going to really compress the amount of time that we have for that rain to continue to fall. So here you go, places like Fort Pierce, that's where we start talking. We've already gotten about 3-4 inches of rain there. So that is causing some localized flooding. It's not a problem across the entire state, but we definitely are seeing a lot of this. Another threat, in addition to the flooding potential, if you get one of these bands of rain coming over the same areas, tornado threat. It's within these bands of rain that we see these possible quick spin-ups These are not going to be those EF4s, EF5s that we see in the Midwest that stay on the ground for miles and hours. These are going to be quick little spin-ups that are on the ground, usually 5-10 minutes, and then they're gone. And we get a lot of those when these tropical systems come ashore. It's a really common thing. And this particular tornado watch is in effect until midday today. We'll see more issued as this storm continues to move toward the north. But right now, the biggest threat is going to be areas south of the Tampa Bay area. That will spread northward as we head into the afternoon, and we'll likely see an additional warning issued from there. All right, here's our futurecast showing several rounds of this throughout the day today. So this is this afternoon, and notice that we do get some breaks in here. We're going to get some rounds of heavy rain. It's going to be really gusty, it's going to be really windy, and then it's going to relax a little bit. Our overall winds are going to slowly increase, but we're going to see more and more of those heavy rainfall totals until that eye moves over, and this is about 23 hours from now. So we're looking at about 4 o'clock tomorrow morning when that storm passes just to the north. It's on the backside of this that our storm surge threat starts to take over in some locations, or at least continues depending on the path of this. So as the storm is gradually going north, we're talking northeasterly winds. So ahead of it, you may not see much in the way of that, even if you're in evacuation zone A, which hopefully you're not physically in because you have been ordered to evacuate. But it's on the backside of this where we're likely going to force a lot of that water to really come on in here, and that's going to be our biggest threat for evacuation zones. Overall, across the largest scale, that's where we're going to be talking about the wind damage threat. And across the state, that is going to be a threat for us. So that's what we're monitoring very, very carefully. By tomorrow night, expecting things to kind of start to ease up weather-wise, and then of course the cleanup begins from the damage that this storm did. So speaking about storm surge, highest totals are going to be usually on the northeastern side of the storm. So places like Port Charlotte, that's where we could potentially see 9 to 12 feet of this. Sarasota, Manatee counties, we're looking more in that 7 to 9 range at this point. That little shift toward the west did up these numbers a little bit. They haven't jumped significantly since last night. Around the Bay Area, there are some isolated spots where we could see 9 to 10 feet of this now that it's taken a little bit more of a westerly track. Again, these could change by a bit, but this covers evacuation zone A. That's why we said, you know what, guys, that's it. Because of the storm surge threat, it's not safe for you to stay in your house. It's this right here that is the threat. And even if you're on the lower end, you could still be dealing with 4 to 6 feet, which would definitely cause some flooding. Coastal spots of Pinellas, looking less so, looking still 3 to 6 feet, but across the barrier islands there, that's still going to cause some flooding. Actually increases a little bit as we head into Citrus County. That's another spot where we could pick up those numbers closer to 8 to 10 feet there. So we're watching that very, very carefully. Courtney, you were asking me this a few moments ago, getting a lot of questions on Facebook about how storm surge works. And got this kind of, what it basically does is it's pushing the ocean into these
People
areas.
are saying, okay, I live, I haven't been evacuated.
Right.